Cool, so I want to scoot over to this piece of geometry over here, which is a little meshed cross geometry that I created earlier. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at a component called Displace Mesh, which actually allows us to kind of morph or transform a mesh geometry in Pufferfish based on something like an attractor point. So I might just reference this mesh in first, and we'll go and set one mesh here. And then the next thing I wanted to get up, if we go to the Mesh tab again, we want to go ahead and find that Displace Mesh component. And if we come down here, it's just there, and we just want to see the input. So we have a mesh input, and then we have a distances input. And basically what that's going to do is we're going to input the mesh, and every little vertice on our mesh is going to be displaced by a certain amount. So we can easily set up an attractor relationship to do this. I'm going to go and deconstruct my mesh like this, and then we're going to do a distance, and I might create a point and reference that in. So we go set one point, so he's in there, and we're going to measure from that point to each of these vertices, which will give us a nice distance. We can then use a little handy tool that's available in Pufferfish called reparameterize numbers. So if you come up to the number tab and click on reparameterize numbers, it's actually an easier way to do reparams, which is really good. So you just basically put in the numbers, which are all our distances, and if you've done attract points before, this will make sense. And it just spits them out in a 0 to 1 domain, which means you don't have to find the original domain here, which is sometimes really handy and can save you a lot of time. You can also really quickly invert them, so I could go and invert that, and then the larger numbers will become really small, so they'll be close to 0, and the smaller numbers will be close to 1, basically. So what's going to happen essentially is if you're really, really close to this and you've got a small distance, you'll deform more and more. The last thing I want to do is do a multiplication component. And we're just going to multiply this guy by about, I don't know, 25. Oops, a bit bigger than that. And that's going to serve as our distance multiplier. So the largest displacement we're going to have is about 25 units. So I'll plug that into distances, and you'll see what happens straight away. Wherever this point is, basically our mesh is going to displace itself or move itself based on the normal of its base geometry. So we get like a very transformed version of this mesh output. So I'm going to group those guys, and I'm going to just label it as displaced mesh. And I might actually bake one of these. Hit bake, and I'm going to move it over here. And I might rotate it as well, because the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to move back into our tweening. I'm going to preview that off. And we're going to tween between these two mesh geometries that we've got here.